Login mechanism is another important moment they ask some questions, or even they don't ask, you have to tell them as part of performance optimization. Login mechanism plays very vital role. Okay, you have to explain. We implemented this and it will be present in our real-time projects also. Okay, and email alerting, yes, we implemented, and this is there in real-time project also. And error handling is also same. Okay, and data load type, full load we covered, but in general, we have a full load, delta load, we can say history load also. Let me write. We will cover all these things in our upcoming project. Okay. And authentications for link service, we used SAMI, system assigned managed identity, but in real time we have these kind of access authentication methods. Okay. So you just have this knowledge. Okay, it need not that people will ask you, but you should aware what type of authentication you people use in your project. You can say this. Okay, and integration runtime, we use self-hosted for on-prem, and also cloud also we use self-hosted. You can use either one. Okay, or if it is a cloud based, you can also use auto resolver. um, but generally people use a self-hosted integration runtime. For more idea, I think you can just go through this. Okay. Um,
Basically, self-hosted has much more security because it is hosted in our own environment, right? So instead of going with auto resolver, people in a real time will prefer self-hosted for all the link service, whether it might be inside Azure or outside the Azure or any other cloud. So most of the time, architects will prefer self-hosted IR only.
okay. So Azure Active Directory is a very important concept in Azure, but unfortunately we did not cover due to a times constraint. We are sure that we are going to cover as part of our next project. Will be so this will be project will be present in our real time project. So you should have a knowledge on this. Okay. If you say I don't know this, then you are done. That's it. They will immediately understand that you don't have a practical knowledge, because every engineer, 90% of people will aware this what is Azure Active Directory, what it will do. Okay, so we recommend you to please go through in materials, or if you already know the subject, it's file. If still not find a suitable subject or material, don't worry, we will cover this topic in our next sessions. And languages, as of now, we use SQL and Python, but in real time, we may use this. But either one, okay. Nobody, I mean, I don't think that in single project we will use both languages. No, majority case, this is a combination. This is a very rare combination. Scala with SQL is a very rare. I don't say that nobody using. No, people are using, but the majority case Python will be used as part along with the Spark. Okay, ADF pipeline monitoring and Azure Logic App we used. And monitoring, of course, we used the monitoring tab, right? So monitoring tab we used, we showed you how we can track the alerts and how we can able to see the pipelines or triggers and all, right? And testing, we did only unit testing, but generally we have this kind of a testing, unit testing, and testing team will do all this integration test, and also some kind of a smoke test or end-to-end test or dry run test. They will do those kind of tests, and you need not to remember all these things, because that is the testing team will do. And finally it goes to user acceptance testing. Once they accept it, then we are done and ready to move for production. Okay. And bug fixes and refinement. Bug fixes we haven't covered, because generally bug fixes also uh, once we complete our development, based on the, let us say if testing team is doing some testing, if they find some data mismatch or some performance issue, they will raise the bugs on us. So we have to work on it, and we are try to resolve those and fix it. Okay, that you have to explain. And CICD, of course, we covered as good as a real-time project, so you no need to worry. Whatever we did in our last sprint 7 session, you can explain that. There's no problem at all. Okay. And performance optimization is a very important. Definitely, you can expect a question from every interview. Okay, whenever you go. All right. So I just listed few, but these are not the fix. You can cover a number of based on your practical experience. Okay. And let me just walk through few. Design ADA pipeline to execute tasks concurrently. Okay, that means parallel processing. If it is allowed, then you have to opt for parallel processing. Why said I allowed? I mean, why I'm referring word allowed means some jobs should run only one after another serial, but some jobs there is no kind of a dependency. Then you can go and run a parallel processing, right? So you have to identify based on the business requirement. Let us say we have a two sources. Okay, we already have a two sources, right? Uh, MySQL and SFTP. If both are independent on the ingestion side, okay, why should we wait one after another? We can trigger two at a time, right? That is called a parallel processing. That is one. And the second one is inside pipeline also we have a options to increase or decrease the parallel processing. Okay. Let us say you have to load. There is a database in SQL Server. In database, we have 100 tables. If you put option as a sequence, what it will do? It will load first to table, then go to second table. It will load second table, then it will go to third table. Let us say if each table is taking 1 minute to load, 100 minutes it will complete, right? It will take 100 minutes to complete a full load to load 100 tables into a target system, right? That means that is a time taking. Instead of if you use parallel processing, let us say in case of sequence, better you use parallel 10 threads. So 10 tasks will trigger at a time and 10 tables will load at a time. That means in 1 minute, 10 tables will load. To load 100 tables, it will take only 10 minutes. That is the beauty of parallel processing. So we increased performance, right? We increased performance. Instead of 100 minutes, now job is taking 10 minutes to load 100 tables when we use parallel processing. But you have to remember number of cores are available or not in the cluster or not. If a cluster is fully occupied, then we don't recommend. But even you schedule it, then it will go into queue if there are not sufficient resources are available in a cluster. Okay, but yes, this is one point. And compression techniques. Right? We haven't compressed our data while bringing from on-prem to cloud. But generally, what will happen while bringing data from on-prem to cloud, we should do a zip or upstream. A team will push their data into our source landing folder with a compressed file, not directly normal files. They will compress the data and then they will push the data for further processing. So we have to use compressed techniques because let us say if right, if 1 GB of file, if you try to compress, how much it will do? Like almost 50 to 70% it will compress, right? Assume if you processing 10 GB of data, or let us say 10 files, each file is 1 GB without compression. So it may take 10 minutes. It may take 10 minutes or more than that. So let us say 20 minutes it's taking. Now, if you compress the same data to zip, then 1 GB become a 300 MB into 10 files. That means 3 GB or 4 GB maximum. 4 GB versus 10 GB. If a 10 GB is taking a 20 minutes, 4 GB might take 8 minutes. This is also one way of performance tuning. You have to verify or you have to see the project requirement and take this call. Okay. And majority case, those are the CSV files or JSON, whatever, based on the business requirement. So while you are pushing that into a landing in target system, you can load that as a Parquet instead of CSV. because Parquet have a better compression technique, right? You can use Parquet with snappy compression. We have an option in ADF. Okay. Multiple pipelines performing similar tasks but with the distinct sources of a destinations. Okay. Parameterization enables you to create a single pipeline template that accept different parameters. This reduces the need for redundant pipeline definitions and optimized resource. Okay. Let me tell you what is this. Right? Our pipelines, what we develop completely metadata driven. Okay. Let us say we used only MySQL, but in real time might be SAP, might be Salesforce, might be some other system, this database. Since we did a parameterization, you remember job ID we used, job ID 101 means ADF, job ID 102 MySQL, like that, job ID 103 my SAP, job ID 104 Salesforce. So by using that job ID, we will try to pull our respective data from metadata table to logging into a respective sources, right? Otherwise, what will happen? We used only, you remember, we used only one pipeline, we can say. By using that one pipeline, we can connect MySQL, we can connect Salesforce, we can connect SAP, we can connect any other database. Because how it is happening, it is a parameterized, right? We no need to use dedicated pipeline for each source. We can use the single pipeline for multiple sources. That saves a lot of time. That is also you can explain in a interviews. If you get a kind of a question. Parameterization also help us to improve a performance. Okay. And I we strongly recommend if you are going with a project ADF with a database, you please use, if you are strong in database, better use majority case database, because database we use a Spark. You remember one activity, I will give you an example. So after processing, right, we moved our files from landing to processed folder. How it was happened? If you want to use that now, through ADF, you have to use two activities. One is copy activities, another one is delete activities. Copy activities to copy from landing to processed folder, and delete activity, you have to delete a file from the landing, whatever it got processed, right? There are two activities it's supposed to trigger, and two activities may take its own time. Let us say 1 minute, 1 minute. If that activity is taking, let us say 30 seconds, 30 seconds. The two activities together is taking 1 minute. But when you use a database in a single line, that is a move, might be take 10 seconds. I'm just giving you one example. What about the real time? You might have to write this kind of, you might have to face this kind of situation many times, right? So indirectly, you are saving time. That means you are doing a performance tuning. This is also one technique. And data profiling. You have to see when you get a chance to first time, right? What type of data it is, how many tables those are. Okay, is there any column mismatches or data type mismatches or null values are populating or too many small tables? Okay, you have to examine all these things, and you have to do a data profiling. Data profiling is a kind of a, you are doing a optimization at a data level. Okay, and implement the partitions. Right, guys? So partitions, without partitioning, you won't complete a batch oriented projects. I'm sure, because I almost completed a real-time project so far, 4 to 5. This is a common. Partitioning is very important. So if you use partitioning, right? Majority of you guys already know what is partitioning. I don't want to explain now, but you have to use a partitioning to get a better performance. Okay. When dealing with a large data set, opt for incremental load. Okay. So there might be some situation, a client may ask you, I have this much of data. What do you suggest, whether it is full load or incremental load? So you just try to understand business functional requirement as well, and then suggest them. If there is no harm, by going with the incremental load, then suggest them to go for the incremental load instead of full load, because this will give a better performance, and also it will save a lot of resources and also cost. And allocate resources based on your pipeline needs. Let us say if you incremental loads, don't allocate incremental loads, right, it won't process huge data. As we discussed, for a huge data loads, we are going with F8 or F16 clusters in instant pools, whereas we are going with the standard DS3 kind of clusters for a job cluster to process a small amount of data, especially incremental loads, right? So this is also one of the performance tuning and cost saving technique. Okay, and implement auto scaling that Aster explained, right? So instead of making clusters static, make clusters auto scale. Just based on the data, you predict the data how much it may process. Based on that, you please choose for a auto scaling option. Okay, so that it will save our time and cost a lot. Okay, and so as part of data profiling, guys, you can also mention the data normalization and data denormalization. If you don't know that concept, you please Google it, you will get to know. Okay, data normalization and denormalization. Okay, there are many more, guys. There are many more. I'm not included all, but you people can go ahead. Okay, last question. Sorry, last discussion, like project challenges. It's limited, but we can add more. You can say that we used to get a lot of small files, like it is a 5 MB each file, but you know what we did, the small files case. When we take these small files, we used to take the small files as it is into our folders, but once we get the files into a landing after archive, we use the script or we use a Spark. We can say um, we made those small files into a big file called 200 MB or 120 MB, because Spark works on the 128 or 120 or partition based, it will do, right. So it will give you a better performance when a pipe file size is 100 MB, as by my knowledge, because we did some small R&Ds while we are working on a Spark. So it has given a very good performance when I used file size as 100 to 120 MB. Okay, so for that we use the shell script to make it the small files into a big file. Once it reaches 100 MB, it will go ahead and create one more file. So we this is the problem, and we fix the problem with that mechanism or that approach. And duplicate records always it will flow irrespective of the project. So you have to take the necessary steps, like you may have to use a drop duplicates inbuilt function in Spark. If not, you may go with a window functions called row number and get a resolve. And data mismatch issues you commonly get when you do a projects, migration projects, or while testing. So how you utilized your technical expertise to reduce these data mismatches, and have you saved your time or your developer's time or tester time while creating some jobs to automatically check the data mismatch. Let us say data count. Okay, you remember we implemented data count, right? Data count means source versus target, how many files got loaded or how many records it got loaded. You no need to go manually and check how many records it got loaded, or if let us say SFTP location we have 100 files, they pushed it, or 10 files each day they should come. So somebody should do a scrutiny, right? Whether this 10 files got processed successfully or not into our cloud or not, right? So who is going to check those details? So you have to write some code, or you have to develop some pipeline which will validate all these things. It's supposed to validate a number of tables that we loaded. It's supposed to validate number of files we loaded. It's supposed to validate accounts check between source and target, and if there are any mismatches, you should send an allowed. So this is also a way you can explain. Okay, and pipeline run time issue. Probably, majority cases are now, or majority projects are now migration projects. They migrate from on-prem to cloud, right? That means the previous data is already flowing in a on-prem. So they will give you go ahead only when your final data should match with their on-prem data also. Let us say one company is there. They are using talent with the Cloudera. Okay. See, they are getting very good output. Okay. Whatever they are expected. But problem is they're facing some challenges while debugging or the processing time is taking more. So hence, they want to move to cloud. Okay, but they want same data, as a output. So in that case, right, we have to cross verify our data is matching with this Cloudera data or not, or data is matching with Hadoop data or not, or our data is matching with Talent or not. Okay, so we have to verify, right? So in order to match the pipelines which got scheduled in Cloudera or Talent should be matched with the pipelines scheduled in Azure also, right? Otherwise, there could be some data mismatches. It will come. Let us say Talent loaded till date, second December. If Azure pipeline loaded till December 1st, you never see the match data in output, right? So that is called timing issue. Okay, this kind of issues we will face a lot in our real time projects. Okay, so I just mentioned few, guys. There are multiple. You can add a number of issues that you faced. Okay, and Spark performance, like, see, somebody is asking performance, like cluster related. So once you select auto scaling, 99% you won't see this kind of issues, right? So again, if we did a on-prem project without this cluster concepts, then I would have written one more comment or one more point here, that Spark memory constraint error. But I don't want to write because there is no scope as of now. Once we use auto scaling or good clusters, it's very rare that we get a Spark, memory issue. Okay, Spark memory. It's very rare. Okay, I'm just writing for a placeholder purpose, but it's very rare to get a Spark memory issue in Azure when you choose a good cluster size or auto scaling option. Okay, but you can explain this point as well. Nobody will ask you, and you can also say that earlier they used normal tables, standard tables versus partition tables.
Yeah, Naresh, Rajeshwar.
Mm.
When we do unit testing, where we are going to log, it's in ADO boards, unit testing, developer
No,
side.
no, 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 no. Unit testing, it's internal, like how you develop a pipelines now. Once you complete your pipelines, you have to take all the proofs and create a unit testing document and pass it to, you can say, ADO board. When we assign tasks to you, right? You can
Mhm.
upload there itself. This task has been completed and this is the unit test report.
Okay, it's a Excel report. It's Excel sheet.
Not Excel, Word document general we use to create a unit testing document.
Hi Naresh, I'm Yogesh here. This is like, what is the cluster size in your project, present project?
We are using standard DS3 V2 version for job cluster
Okay.
interactive purpose. But when we process huge data, that is historical loads and all, we'll use pools. The cluster configuration is F16 or F8.
And one more is like, what is the framework you are using for data ingestion in your project?
Spark is a framework, but here you have to tell them that ADF we are using as a ETL tool, ingest the data from on-prem to cloud. Okay.
Okay.
Next question.
And one more question, I don't know whether it is, I have written it correct or wrong. What is the project
Good.
data life cycle in your project?
Data life cycle, it generally involves all the steps that we did within our project, like ingestion, storage, processing, analytics. So from end to end, we can encapsulate in this question itself. Okay, what?
Okay.
Yeah, yeah. From ingestion to visualization, Power BI and step for the data analytics team. So everything is part of this. Yeah.
Yeah. Okay. Thank you. That's it.